Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, your news and politics show for the Hoosier state without all the both sides, bad faith, MAGA BS. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm recording from Bloomington. I've got a great panel with me here this morning. We're going to meet them in just a moment. Before that, hey, please remember to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Subscribe to Project Next Media. Be sure to hit that bell so you get a reminder whenever we go live. If you're on Facebook, same thing. Be sure to subscribe and get reminders so you know when we are going to be going live. That's all for that. Let me bring in our panelists today. First, my guest from this week's Who's Left podcast, the fantastic Jennifer David, board-certified behavior analyst and disability advocate. Jennifer, thanks for being with me again this week.
Yeah, I'm excited.
It's good. Yeah, it's good to see a lot of you. We're going to talk about Medicaid later in the show. That's our one big thing. A lot of these cuts to the social safety net. And as somebody who works in that space, I'm really interested to hear your take on that.
Well, thank you.
Who else we got here today? Hey, that's Dr. Terry Goodin.
Hey, Scott Aaron Rogers. How are you, brother?
Doing great, sir. Really appreciate you being here. You know, you're another person who works in these spaces where those social safety net cuts are really going to be felt out in the community. And hey, I hear you got a new job.
Hey, yeah. So took on the interim superintendent's job there in Salem. So we're looking to keep the school corporation there, keep them strong and healthy, and keep them on the right track.
Congratulations to you, and congratulations to those folks down there in Salem. They got themselves a really good administrator.
Gee shucks. Thanks, Scott.
And finally with us today, there is Trish Whitcomb. Welcome back.
Good to be here. And I just have to point out that we really have these southeastern Indiana powerhouses here with Jennifer from Clark and Terry from Scott and me from Jackson counties. We just like get on 65 and go straight down. Yep. So thanks for inviting us together. I think there's a little special spark when we're all together. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. And I really think this is a good crew here to talk about the issues we're going to talk about today. We will build up to that. That is our one big thing this morning. But first, I want to start with our Indiana news. We'll take a trip around the state in a segment I like to call Around the Corn. So this week, our Indiana statewide Republican elected officials continued to show their ass. So Governor Mike Braun shows himself to be a toothless, empty blue shirt who can't keep his red-pilled minions under control. Last week, we saw Todd Rokita brought before the state Supreme Court again, where they refused to dismiss a disciplinary complaint against him for his comments against OBGYN Caitlin Bernard a couple years ago. Now, not to be outdone, our wonderful Secretary of State, Diego Morales, takes the wheel of the MAGA clown car in the middle of this week, going on a 15-minute rant during like a routine motor vehicle advisory board meeting, repeating the term fake news a dozen times. And I wanted to stop there and maybe look at Morales a little bit. Trish, Diego, fake news a dozen times in a 15 minutes. That is downright Trumpian.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And to call WIBC a failed network, and what did he say? Propaganda machine with a microphone or something. I mean, come on now.
Yes. Quote, I'm not going to let the fake news, the fake Indy Star, the fake WIBC to define me. And I'll just interject that like WIBC is a right-wing outlet with right-wing commentators on all day long. And Indy Star, while they do have a lot of good journalism that goes on there, that has always been a right-leaning paper.
Yeah. And so to call that fake news, where are Hoosiers supposed to get their information? So now Morales, between hiring all of his relatives and the car and everything, I mean, I like to think of him and Beckwith and Braun as the frat boys, the misfit frat boys. And that's how they're running the state. They tolerate each other's bad behavior unless they can leverage it against them, like we see with Beckwith and Braun. But for the most part, they're treating their responsibilities like their own private party. And that's just hurting Hoosiers every day.
Well, and, here's the thing about Morales. Like he spent this again. It's like a motor vehicle board meeting or something. It has nothing to do with him and his shenanigans. But he has received lots of criticism. Criticism in the media, and I think rightfully so, because he goes on international travel a lot. Who's paying for it? We don't know. He hires donors and family members to run his office, and gives out no-bid contracts like candy, big bonuses for, again, some of these folks, family members. So I like this from the story, which actually got picked up nationally on rawstory.com. One of his office's duty is to oversee the state's auto dealers. So I guess that's the purpose of this thing. Again, auto dealers are one of the biggest Republican donor classes are. Like the Republican Party, their base is people who own car dealerships for sure. Terry, do you what do you think about Diego, about his rant? What's he distracting from now? What's he doing?
So, really, Scott, if I can, I'm going to say this. I think he's a pretty sharp fellow, because what's he getting in all of this, no matter what the outcome is, at the end of the day, he's getting press recognition, right? And name recognition is huge. And I think Morales, Beckwith, and Rokita are, I think you're seeing the start of the Republican gubernatorial primary, maybe even this next cycle or the next for sure. So you have the monster from Munster up there, Rokita. He says something, right? So then all of a sudden, once he talks, then Beckwith has to say, okay, I've got to get my name in the paper, right? So he does crazy stuff. And then you have Diego saying, man, those two guys aren't going to up me, so I've got to get my name in the paper. So really, at the end of the day, if you stop and think about it, it's all about raising the level of their name recognition. Unless there's something really drastic happens at the end of the day, people are busy. They skim through headlines and all they see is Diego Morales. They don't really dig into the details of what Diego was doing or whoever. So their names splashed across the front page of the Indy Star or announced time radio station. We all know what advertising costs, right? So think about all that free advertising all three of these fellas are getting. And I've started to support them because I realize that it's all just it's all just an attempt to try to get media recognition, and daggone it, they're being very successful about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Jennifer? Is this a case of any publicity is good publicity?
I guess so. These guys have been at this game a lot longer than me. I was kind of hoping maybe it meant he was starting to get a little worried about his doings, but Terry's right. No, any kind of way that you can get your name out there, whether it's good or bad, is good, and it seems to be happening and working very well for the Republican Party. They're constantly in the headlines with all of their misdeeds and things that they're doing to the state of Indiana and our country.
Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of Republican misdeeds in Indiana, our Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith cannot stay out of the spotlight too long. Can't let Rokita have that publicity. Can't let Morales have that publicity. So he's got two scandals in the news this week. First of all, this one from, I found it on News Warsaw, but I believe it came from the Indiana Citizen originally, in that Lieutenant Governor Beckwith replaces the Okra staff with congregants from his church, friends, and allies. Okra is the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. So as he took office in January, he and his aides quickly remade the small state agency in his image. The turnover was possible because while the governor oversees most of the executive branch, state law places Okra, under the lieutenant governor's purview in the Department of Agriculture, he tapped Republican delegates who backed his bid at the convention last year, followers of the church, a radio personality from Evansville that was a big backer of his, and others. Terry, this is one of those organizations, Department of Agriculture. You were running for lieutenant governor this year. This would have been your purview. How important is this office, and what kind of damage is he doing by putting unqualified folks in there?
That's very important, and we're going to talk a little bit about the USDA also, Scott, and then the part I crafted between the USDA and the Office of Okra. Of course, Okra stands for the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. So with that, with the new funding formulas, especially, but previously even, it's very difficult for small communities to be able to raise dollars to projects, put in fix sidewalks, to fix their sewer plant, or whatever that may be. And so what Okra did was they came in and they put together programming that supplied funding for these small communities to be able to move forward, because there's just a lack of funding. And you've got to have folks who are expertise in community development. You've got to have an engineering background, and folks who have a background in just community involvement and being involved in communities and being a part of helping communities grow. And from what I can see, none of those folks that they're going to be appointed are going to fit that bill. But it's going to be devastating to rural communities once again. And the rural communities continue to feed off of supporting candidates. And man alive, this is just another poke in the eye to rural communities across the state of Indiana.
Yeah, Okra really helps bind things together, and that is a culinary joke. But also, like, that is not his only scandal this week. So additionally, Indiana Capitol Chronicle had this one, that office, Lieutenant Governor Beckwith's State House office has been repeatedly closed during public business hours in recent weeks, at times with no signage posted and no staff inside. And this is the important part, I think. Even as Governor Mike Braun has ordered a broad return to in-person work for state employees. So while the other state employees have to return to office, the Capitol Chronicle visited the LG's office 6 times between late June and mid-July and found it dark or locked on 4 occasions. 3 of them, June 20th, June 27th, and July 11th on Fridays. Sounds like Micah and co. are taking 3-day weekends when all the other government employees in the state are mandated to return to the office. His folks get to work from home, get to start the weekend early, do as I say, not as I do. Jennifer, I haven't spent enough time talking to you. What say you on this?
Well, I am for a 3-day weekend, but not when we're paying for people to be working and also telling everybody else to be at the office. So I'm not surprised. I mean, I don't think anybody is probably surprised by this at all. It just seems to be that way with this administration. You know, we're going to do things our way, but we're going to expect you guys to do things the way that, we tell you to. So it makes it really hard, though, for other people to do their job, though, that need to come into the office and take care of business as well. So, but, this is definitely not fake news, and it's also not new news. It's probably the way things just have been for a while.
Yeah, that's kind of the flow from this party, but it's like, Trish, it's the hypocrisy that really galls me, between Beckwith and his staff working from home, if they're even working on these Fridays, right? Mm-hmm. Then Braun with his helipad commuting from Jasper, working from home there. I think you said he's only maybe doing 3 or 4 days a week at the Capitol. These things wouldn't bother me. I'm a fan of remote work. I think remote work's a great idea. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to mandate everybody else does it, a real leader is in there in the fight with their people, not sitting on high and dictating to the little ones, right?
But that's part of the problem, though. I'm sorry, Trish.
No, go ahead, Jennifer.
I don't think a lot of people in the Republican Party see it that way. A lot of people in the Republican Party are okay with people telling them, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what you're going to do. And they, see these people as kings or queens or whatever. Like it very much does fall in line with what a lot of people in the Republican Party are like.
That's right, Jennifer. And I'll tell you what this also is. I think Hoosiers should have a reasonable expectation that if they need to talk to their elected officials or the people surrounding them, that they can go to the Capitol and see them on the job, at least during business hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I worked at the superintendent's office at the State House, people came in every day, and maybe they didn't get to talk to the superintendent. Maybe they ended up talking to some of us, but at least we were there, and people, or they could call us on the public phone number and they would reach us immediately. So I think that this is a distancing. I think, Jennifer, this follows on with what you're saying. Let's get these elected officials to be remote from the people they're supposed to be serving, so that they won't have an expectation that those elected officials are there to serve them, that the election officials are doing their magic, and, you know, it's behind the curtain. So I just think this portends more and more elitism among the Republicans, which is the irony, because that's what they've been saying about Democrats for so long, that we're all educated elites. No, look at what's happening at the State House.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to borrow your culinary approach, and really hypocrisy fiber that holds all of these elected officials together, right? I mean,
Right.
Hypocrisy, and that's all you can say it is. It's just ridiculous, and I don't get it why people don't understand that. Jennifer, you probably hit it on the head, that these folks in their party are so well trained now, been beat down so much that this is just their expectation, and any little crumb that falls off the table and falls to them, they take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably like, oh, he worked so hard all week. You know, they work so hard. It's not like everybody in the office is there and he's not there, which, you know, that could be understandable in the day of business. You know, he's gone doing things, but Trish said people should be able to go there and see their people working and doing the job of the people of Indiana.
100%. So, like, listen, let's talk about the kind of results you get from this leadership. This one came down this week. I saw this in the Indy Star. Headline: Hoosiers hit with historically high electric bill increases, consumer watchdogs study shows. So, Citizens Action Coalition, great group here in Indiana, collected and analyzed 20 years of data from 5 of the state's monopoly utilities: NIPSCO, Centerpoint, Duke, AES, and I&M, and found residents were hit this year with the highest year-over-year price increase since at least 2005. The group's key findings show a statewide average energy bill increase of 17.5%. That's almost $30 a month. You know, that's well over $300 a year if my math is right. Jennifer, these folks provide this style leadership, but like real Hoosiers feel it in their pocketbooks. Yeah. And especially, I know all of you work in communities where that money goes a long way. People need that in their pockets. Yeah.
Well, and this is not a surprise, because I know as Democrats, we were talking about this time last year, and we were telling everybody that this was coming and it's going to continue to come. And here it is. I mean, $30 is a lot of money when you're paying an extra $30 at the grocery store, and you're paying an extra $30 for, you know, Americans are paying extra for every single thing, even things that we don't need to be paying extra for. You know, things that were $1, you know, now it's $1.25. Well, it hasn't really gone up that much. People are just taking advantages of nickel and diming us for everything, and at the same time taking away that safety net. So I don't know where we're going to be at this time next year when we're talking again about these things.
Yeah, and it's so important you brought up the safety net again, which we're going to come back to. That's our one big thing today. But, you know, that in conjunction with, so, you know, they're going to support you less with things that help you in your day-to-day life, and then also charge you more for the other things you need in your day-to-day life.
And now you still can't afford those things, and you can afford them even less now. because you have less money and you don't have that safety net. Yeah, it's interesting.
It
Yeah.
is. It
Say the
is
least.
disappointing and sad.
It's a blatant attack on working families, and just their entire political agenda is a blatant attack on working families. I mean, we're going to get into this hopefully a little bit later on, Scott. But you know, the tariffs, which has raised the cost of everything. That I'm sure that's what Jennifer was referring to, has raised the cost in the grocery store and at the department stores or wherever you're at. And the money, he said, he's how many $1 billion he's raised. Well, you know, they're always the Republicans are always good about saying they're going to send tax dollars back, that they overraised tax dollars, or the taxes came in better, so we're going to send that tax money back. All of that tariff money should be sent back to American consumers in a check, right? Split it up amongst Americans, send it back, because that's where every bit of that came from. And it's don't see that. It's almost a dichotomy that the state of Indiana always sends back a tax refund check because we're flush with money, right? This seems to be something different, but it's not. It's blatant. But you know, really, you talk about this attack on working families. We talk about cuts in Medicaid. All right, there you go. Entry-level job, entry-level workforce. Those folks depend on Medicaid for their health care, right? So that's going to be cut. It's not going to be cut until after the midterm election. The Democrats will take control of the House, hopefully in 26. Well, after those Medicaid cuts then take effect, then guess who's going to get the blame for cutting their Medicaid? It's going to be those Democrats who are in control, right? So this is all a huge, nice, well planned out agenda here for those folks to be able to stay in command, stay in control, and stay in charge, and continue to beat down working families. The tax rate on high earning Americans is absolutely ridiculous. It's too low. They need to figure out a way to have a fair taxing structure. And then with that taxing structure, I guarantee you we won't worry about deficits, because we'll have more money than what the American country can use to help out its own people. So we've got to figure out, okay, this attack on working families, the highest gas tax, tariffs, groceries you can't afford in the grocery store, cutting higher education funding, taking money away from children. They're doing away with my way pre-K, which folks don't do that, you know? So they're taking money from poor children, giving rich kids to get vouchers to go to private schools.
Right.
So all this, man. And here's what's going to happen again. So who are the people who use my way pre-K? Those are folks who are in those entry-level jobs, right? Well, guess who's going to be quitting their jobs now because they can't afford to send their kids to that child care. So this is just another example of, okay, now we're going to have all these entry-level mothers and parents. They're going to have to quit their jobs because they've got to stay home and keep an eye on their kids, right? So as we move forward, all of these things accumulate, and at some point it becomes unbearable. And at some point, I hope folks wake up and see this. This has all been taking place, and it's just ridiculous that somehow, some way, it's just passing through without anybody even noticing.
Yeah, they want us poor, they want us desperate, and they want us uneducated, right? So we're easy to control. And along those lines, also this week saw this story from Indiana Capital Chronicle. Indiana's college going rate drops again, dipping to 51.7%. A couple quotes from that article. So that is the state's lowest rate in recent history, and a continued decline from its previous plateau. So just under 52% of 2023 graduates, that's about 39,000 students, enrolled in college within a year of finishing high school. That's down from a steady 53% for the last couple years, and far below, and this is the real statistic right here, far below the state's peak of 65% a decade ago. Boy, you know, like over the last decade, Trish, who's been overseeing Indiana's government and overseeing this decline in college enrollment?
Well, we know the Republicans have done everything they can to make it very hard to even get a K-12 education, let alone go on for higher education. I am someone who believes that post-secondary education is vital for just an individual to have a thriving life and a good life and pick his or her own direction. But this thing about college graduation, or even going into college, Michael Hicks has written on this extensively. And there's study after study that shows there is a direct correlation between college graduates and the kind of work they do and the kind of contribution they make to an economy and the well-being of the entire community, whether you went to college or you pursued a trade or you went on to a vocational school, or as we call CTE, whatever. That it is the college graduate and the work that they do and the contribution that they make, because they're running companies, they're innovating, they're doing the kinds of things that grow economies. And without that, we will continue our path of being like the world's warehouse and trucking pathway. I mean, that's it. That's where we're going. You know, a long time ago, and I don't think that this has improved. When I was at the superintendent's office, we commissioned a study about the top 10 income generating jobs in each of the workforce development regions of the state. When we got down to the region that most closely correlates with the 8th congressional district, we couldn't even find any occupations that paid more than $15 an hour, except for the college graduates who were, you know, working in banks, lawyers, pharmacists, the professional folks. So when you have that big of a geographic area where people can't even make, and $15 an hour wasn't a livable wage then, and it is about half of livable wage now. You can see why our state is in such bad shape. And it's going to continue as long as these Republicans are doing everything they can to disrupt public education and to put down higher education and devalue it in a way that's very counterproductive for our state.
Yeah, Scott, if I can, I'd really like to jump in.
Please.
Because being a school superintendent and then being involved in the legislature with higher ed, I always like to dig into the facts as we see these things unfold. And there's a reason. Well, what's the reason why the college level is dropping in Indiana? Because we all know that the largest rung on the socioeconomic ladder is a better education, right? It's post-secondary school, where that's CTE or where college. That is a fact. There's no doubting that. So you look back through and say, well, why are these kids not wanting to continue on? And you look, and it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you'll look through that same decade, you'll notice that the funding that goes to our universities and postgraduate study programs have been drastically slashed and cut. So the result of that is those universities have to raise tuition, right? So the universities have to raise tuition to cover costs. And then what happens is when they raise tuition, then people go to college, right? So
vicious cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a cycle, and we've got to figure out how we fund our higher education program. Like I said before, not college, the post-secondary programs like the trades, the carpenter, electrician, all of those positions do well. Those guys and gals do wonderful, and it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, as you said, Scott. Why did they not expect this to happen? And maybe they did. That's why they are cutting funding. So, you're looking at a guy that tries to create more educational opportunities for the students in this school. And a superintendent who, the first school corporation in the state of Indiana that was able to get their students to graduate with associate's degrees the same time they graduate with a high school diploma. So it's somebody who's real blood and guts in this thing, man. And it's really disgusting to hear that.
Yeah. It's beyond disappointing. It's heartbreaking. I do want to move on and talk about another one of your areas of expertise, though, Terry. So there was this unique announcement this week. The USDA is moving from its headquarters from the Washington, D.C. area and splitting things into like 5 hub locations: Kansas City, Raleigh, North Carolina, Fort Collins, Colorado, Salt Lake City, Utah, and the 5th one is here in Indianapolis. Now, listen, I am generally loath to support anything out of the Trump administration, but this doesn't seem like a terribly bad idea to me. Am I wrong? What am I missing, Terry?
Well, I think as time has moved on, technology has definitely helped out agencies like the USDA. You don't necessarily have to be in the spot where the program is to be able to work with it. But really, what this is, Scott, is consolidation. And as you look at that, you say, okay, they didn't get the number of people to retire that they wanted to under Elon Musk, right? They were forcing all employees. So guess what? You're now working in Washington, D.C., but you've got to move to Indianapolis, Indiana now if you want to keep your job. So come on, man. Who's going to, I mean, great, but Washington, D.C. right? Or anywhere else that these offices are going to close. You just can't afford to do that. So what happens is you lose more federal workers when you do that. And that's the whole plan, is how do we continue to shed employees from the workforce? And I'm glad it's Indiana that's going to get the regional office, because that's going to create more opportunities for Hoosiers. Now, I can't say anything for anybody else in the surrounding states that's going to lose those offices. Those jobs are just going to disappear and they won't come back. So,
yeah, it definitely seems like a way of disempowering the DMV area, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, where there are so many federal employees. And I know a lot of those federal employees tend to vote Democratic in elections, and if they break up the base of the federal workforce and spread them out to various places, maybe they get enough people out of the Northern Virginia area where they can snag a congressional seat or flip a Senate seat or something over there. I don't know. Jennifer, am I looking at that too cynically?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my husband to turn the air conditioner down. I completely missed that. I'm slightly afraid to do this. But no, you're never too cynical, though.
Trish, am I,
No, and
would they do this?
Well, and your list of relocations for all these people, I think they're all in red states. And so as wonderful of a job that Dr. Goodin did when he was running USDA here in Indiana, and coupling it with the activities of Okra and really pushing things that are good for Indiana and good for Hoosiers, I'm afraid, just like what Terry said before about the chickens coming home to roost during the midterms, when all the cuts and everything, it's going to make it look like the Democrats have done all of that. I think that this is, let's put these resources in red states to help lift up our Republican, and Indiana is probably about the most radically Republican that you've mentioned in those states. Let's put our resources out there and help our red state governors to look popular and look like they're contributing to the overall economy and to help their state, which it is helping, as Terry said, but it's also accruing a big political benefit to the Republicans, and that's what I don't like.
I should note that the one of these hubs is in Fort Collins, Colorado. Colorado has been a blue state pretty consistently over the last several years, though I should note that Fort Collins is a particularly conservative area.
Yeah.
But the last thing I wanted to address here in Indiana this week, as I forget to move my slide again, everybody look at my USDA picture. Okay, great. Now, so the last thing I wanted to cover in Indiana this week, as we spend our time looking at the chicanery and tomfoolery out of our Republican leadership here in the state, as we, fret over our electric bills, I do not want us to look away from what is happening on our very own soil here in Indiana, and that is Camp Atterbury. We're still not seeing ICE detainees there yet, but more details have emerged this week. On Monday, Representative Andre Carson out of Indianapolis said he's learned Atterbury is preparing to house 1,000 people. And I understand there are protest events taking place next week both related to this and unrelated to this elsewhere in the state. I just want to make sure we don't look away. This is a concentration camp, and we must call it such. And I don't think that is too strong of a word to use. And I'd just like a quick thought from each of you on this, because I haven't heard from you folks on this particular issue yet.
May I just say that we need to remember that they made all of the AmeriCorps participants move out of Atterbury. And this is where young people went for training, people who were disadvantaged educationally, disadvantaged economically, residing at Atterbury to get this program, access to this program. And it was a very successful program. Those students were pushed out of Atterbury about 3 months ago. So this isn't something that just happened now. This is a long-term plan to disadvantage Hoosiers, to support this political agenda of hate and division. And it is, as you say, a concentration camp. No, that's it.
So especially in that area, I mean, it's just so damaging to our country, but to Hoosiers, this is not what even people that voted for Trump were expecting. And this is really, these are neighbors and friends and business owners. And this is really bad for the morale of a lot of communities, especially in that area. You've got Columbus and Seymour. They have a really big Hispanic population. I have individuals that I work with that have mixed family status, and that's just really difficult for them. So having this here, Camp Atterbury, I've had friends that have, been in the Guard. They've been there. They've spent time there, served there. For a lot of people, this is that's just not what this is for. It's to be there and to support Indiana and our country. And there's. I'm down in Clark County. They've had several protests down there because they've using one of the facilities down there for ICE. And so this is going to be a big deal. And I think people will be paying attention.
Yeah, Terry, it's like the dichotomy of Trump's America is like held in that little area right there where you have Atterbury used as a concentration camp to hold detainees who may or may not have actually done anything wrong. And just down the road, Outlet Mall. It is dystopian. Am I wrong?
Oh, you're right. It's amazing that, just like everybody, let's get the criminals and get them out of here, right? But most of those folks are in jail. Let's give them their due process. And if they're here illegally and they broke the law, then see you later, bub, So, but we're picking on good, hardworking people. And, it's a situation where as we move through this whole process, Indiana just becomes a logical choice, because I'm sure that this went out across the wire to all the Republican governors and said, hey, is anybody interested in this in their home state? Okay, so Indiana and Florida says, yeah, right. So we've got Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, and you've got...
So they're also putting one in New Jersey, too.
And one, yeah. So it's like...
And Alcatraz, too.
So
we're actually trying to open that.
Yeah. So it's
what it is, Scott, is this: it's all political theater, but people are going to be hurt from it, and that's what makes it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's important we don't look away, that we don't normalize this, that we don't just let it happen and forget that it's there. We have to keep pointing out this horror as we see it. And, along those lines, I do want to move to our national stories this week. And in transitioning, I want to bring up this fantastic quote from author Sarah Kendzior, one of my favorites. She is a PhD, but she got her master's here at IU in 2006. So once a Hoosier, always a Hoosier. This quote from her in September 22. Trump's main tactic was never to bury his offenses, but to flaunt them. He covered his big crimes with smaller crimes and covered his smaller crimes with scandals, and in the process attempted to destroy the very notion of truth. His presidency exposed the weakness and complicity of institutions and proved that trusting the official line was a sucker's bet. And we're talking about human rights violations here in Indiana with this ICE facility, with a concentration camp. And that's one of these crimes that we're not focusing on enough as we look at all of Trump's scandal, which we're going to talk about here in a second. And one of the other horrifying things that's happening, right under the world's nose while we're deep into the salacious details of Donald Trump's escapades, we've got a famine going on in Gaza that our government is helping perpetuate. So I caught these statistics. This is directly from the World Health Organization. So they say the entire 2.1 million population of Gaza is facing prolonged food shortages, with nearly 500,000 people in a catastrophic situation of hunger, acute malnutrition, starvation, illness, and death. Technically, there are actually very technical definitions of famine and acute hunger and malnutrition. So apparently, technically, they have not reached all of the markers of famine yet, but people are starving now. 3/4 of the population are at emergency or catastrophic food deprivation. Those are the worst 2 levels of IPCC's 5-level scale of food insecurity. I don't even know where to begin. It disgusts me that our country is complicit in this. We should call it out wherever we see it, but it's even more disgusting that we're helping. Jennifer, I want to hear from you.
I see this picture you have up on the screen, and it's just so heartbreaking. There just should be no one in this world in that
There were worse that I won't even show. It's
yeah, I'm sure this. We need to step up. We need to do more. We need to speak out more. These are people, even just trying to get the aid they need, are being shot and being killed. And that's double cruel. That's cruel on top of cruel.
Yeah, I understand, Trish, that there's this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation thing that's been set up in the last several weeks, and basically they've been claiming responsibility for distributing the food aid. This is like a joint U.S.-Israeli operation, and as desperate, hungry people are gathering at these distribution sites, the IDF is picking them off. It's disgusting, and people should be tried for war crimes over this.
Oh, speaking of war crimes, yes, Benjamin Netanyahu, war criminal, accomplice with Donald Trump, who's just a garden variety criminal. But we got to remember that this organization that's supposed to be delivering this food is controlled by Eric Prince's company, which, that's Betsy DeVos's brother. And all this goes back to Trump and how he and Netanyahu, if they can help each other stay in office, despite their criminal behavior, they will sacrifice children. They will sacrifice any human to do that. And there are so many layers of disgust that go into this situation in Gaza. There are no words. I mean, I've said what I can say about it without crying or without heartbreak.
Yeah.
The relationship between the Trump and Netanyahu crime families is well documented, and in fact, Sarah Kendzior, who I just mentioned a minute ago, wrote a really good book about it. As I think that Trump and Netanyahu are essentially basically part of the same mob family, you see way too many Democratic elected leaders in this country willing to be pictured next to the war criminal Netanyahu. Terry, is it time for these people to break publicly with the far right government in Israel?
Well, I think it's time for the Gaza situation come to an end. And I think as you look at that Gaza situation, it's very complicated because Hamas is the perpetrator in this entire system. They have lost a way to fund their war machines. They've lost a way to be able to fund that. So what they have done now is they've infiltrated the communities, and when the food distribution is going out, these Hamas folks are infiltrating and gathering that food coming in, and then charging the Palestinians for food to try to be able to
There's
raise,
no evidence of that.
because they can't tax their folks anymore. So the United States, with our role and what's going on in Israel, all we're doing is perpetuating the situation and perpetuating what's going on. I'm one of those guys that we've got to figure out, okay, there's a right and a wrong here. Let's go right. Let's choose that side. Let's finish this up and let's get out of there. We have no business there. They've been fighting over that territory for 3,000 years, Scott. And I don't think Donald Trump, even with his Abraham Accords and anything else, Ishmael or Isaac or anybody else he wants to bring into the factor, is not going to bring peace to that area, because it's just not going to happen.
Right. And so this is the human tragedy, the horror, the war crimes that we're not paying enough attention to, and I wanted to make sure we took a minute to look at those before we dive into the muck. And listen, I think we first brought this up 4 weeks ago now on this show. And asked, boy, is this the thing, that is going to cause that rift in MAGA and Trump? And each week for the last month, we've been like, wow, this thing's not going away. This thing's not going away. This thing's not going away. And this week, yet again, news in the Trump Epstein scandal. So, Wall Street Journal reported that Pam Bondi briefed Trump in May that his name was in fact in the Epstein files. Shocker of shockers, right? Mm-hmm. But again, even Trump wouldn't admit this. Like he said last week, asked specifically if Bondi had told him that he was in the documents. He was like, "Oh no, just a quick briefing. Wasn't me." No. And then we also see that they called for a federal judge to release transcripts to maybe clear Trump's name. And the judge is like, no, listen, I can't do that. So it was one of these issues where they're like trying to call for transparency when they know they're not actually getting any real transparency. And all week long, I feel like Trump is getting backed into a corner, and he's like throwing objects in the way in front of people as they're coming after him. And he's like, the Washington Commanders and the Cleveland Guardians need to change their name back to offensive Native American stereotypes. Or look, Epstein files. What Epstein files? Here, have the Martin Luther King files, which he released earlier this week. And then the big distraction in the middle of the week was when Director of National Intelligence, and I put intelligence in scare quotes there, Tulsi Gabbard, released a previously classified report, which she says points to a treasonous conspiracy by President Obama and others to undermine the results of the 2016 presidential election. No one takes this thing seriously, but Jennifer, are the distractions working? Do you think folks are moved by any of these things, or are their eyes still squarely on the Trump Epstein scandal?
I have no idea what people think these days. I think it just changes with the news cycle. But I do think, if anything, that there are more Republicans that are more curious about what's going on with the Epstein case. And that, I think, is newsworthy. Could this be the thing that ends up starting to unravel things for Trump? I don't know, but it is very interesting on how people are responding. It's a very salacious story. It's been in the news for many, many years. So, it could be a distraction. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how this plays out.
Terry, I thought Trump was the master media manipulator. I think this entire Trump era over the last 10 years, and even going back before that, his entire career, I think, was about cultivating a certain image, working the media to portray him in a certain way. And several weeks ago, when Bondi comes out with the "nothing to see here" statement,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was just so out of the norm for him. It was a big mistake to just put that out there like nothing's going on. It is a huge own goal, I think, on his department. Is the old man slipping? Did he lose? Has he lost a step?
Well, I don't know if he's lost a step or not, but as you take a look at the whole inquiry and what's happening there is I think, as Jennifer said, I think this is going to have more impact on his base because those people tend to want to think and think in that conspiracy theory mindset, right? Mm-hmm. So this is one of those situations where, hey, they are paying very close attention to this. And that's one reason why Mike Johnson, he sent everybody home from the U.S. House of Representatives because he's wanting everything to kind of clear up because he knows that around the Beltway there, that it's just going to continue to brew and get hotter and hotter. So, but the funny part about that is this, it's a situation where he keeps saying, oh my God, you're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein in 29, what in the world?
Yeah.
He brings up something from 2016 about Barack Obama. So, like, how ironic is this, So I don't think it's going away, but it's one of those deals where we're going to talk about Ghislaine here in just a little bit. Of course, I don't even have to say her last name now because everybody knows who she is, right? She's a household name. But Ghislaine Maxwell, as we work through this, she's getting ready to put out a statement. Right? So as we work through this, let's be careful on what this looks like because Ghislaine Maxwell, at the end of the day, she's going to get a pardon, maybe not. I want all you folks to elaborate on it. At the end of the day, come out of this Supreme Court case. Donald Trump was at our parties, but he always left early. Our Saturday night parties, he always left our Saturday night parties early because he wanted to make sure he got home so he could get up and go to church the next day.
That's exactly it.
Because he has, so I think he's concerned, but his concern is with Maxwell and what she says. I think that's his real concern.
Yeah. And I'm coming to that in a second here, but Terry, you mentioned something there that the MAGA, the folks are really into this because Trump and his people have stoked this conspiracy. So I think maybe they're thinking with the Obama stuff is like, oh, hey, you folks like a conspiracy. Here's one for you. And if I remember, Trish, around 2016, when all the Russia interference stuff was coming out, and it was out there, it wasn't like closely held secret information. It was in the news. If anything, I remember Obama being very careful not to say anything because he didn't want to kind of poison the discourse around the election. When in fact, this stuff was very well proven that Trump was trying to poison the information space on behalf of Trump.
Well, I think we have a couple of dynamics at work here. And one is we have a distraction of the Epstein case as a distraction from the dismantling of our government and our support for the social net, social services net, and education and chemistry. We don't have any chemists at the FDA anymore or the EPA anymore and all that. So we've got a distraction for that. And then we've got Trump trying to distract from this major distraction to say, oh, look at Martin Luther King and Barack Obama, who both happen to be Black. So there's that. And so the thing that I think will continue to give this legs is it isn't just rank and file people talking about this. We've got like Joe Rogan. We've got these other conspiracy theorists whose bread and butter depends on keeping this salacious story alive. And so many of the Trump followers are tied to these programs. And so until we see a shift from these opinion leaders who are the big conspiracy proponents, I think this is going to be out there. Now, whether this will, I'm with Jennifer and Terry on this, we don't know if this is going to be the undoing of Trump, but I think it's just amazing that something like this has everybody's attention when all this other bad stuff is happening. And so we've got the distraction for the distraction, and it's layers upon layers, but none of it's good.
Exactly. Yeah, no, exactly like Kenzier said, covering up big crimes with smaller crimes and smaller crimes with scandals. And this thing that Terry mentioned with Ghislaine Maxwell, Trump dispatched his former personal defense attorney and now Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, sent him to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell. They spoke for something like 9 hours over 2 days. What was said, what was promised. Apparently, he granted her at least some form of immunity for her testimony, and it certainly looks like, and what I'm worried about is they're basically going to get her to say, oh, no, Trump was never involved, right? Like Terry said, oh, no, he always left early. He had to go to church in the morning, right? That Trump was never involved. And then maybe they throw out like some Democratic names, oh, it's Bill Clinton. He was super involved, right? And, they get her to say this, distract from Trump's involvement, put it on somebody else. And then she does her job for the big man and gets a pardon. Yeah. And that's, I think, what I'm worried about, and I think that's what you're worried about. Jennifer, do you see that going that direction?
I just kind of wonder, like, what's going on with her, because literally she has no options except doing whatever it is or saying that the president wants her to say. I mean, she's just not a believable person at all. Plus, she's in prison and had lied on the stand, I think, before. But I think, at some point, people are going to end up turning on Trump. He is a lame duck, and he keeps promising things to his people, his base, and he's not delivering those things. And they're gonna want something, in the end, they're gonna want something, especially since everything is being taken away from them. And they are feeling that. People are feeling that. They may not feel some of that stuff down the road, but they're feeling that every time they go, to the grocery store to get gas, and kids are getting ready to start school. And parents are going to be feeling that pinch even more. So I do think as Democrats, we keep being out there as much as possible, talking about things. And I see, there's a lot of us that ran in 24 in Indiana. Some of us have taken a break because it was really hard, but a lot of people are coming back around. I see a lot of Democrats, and like Trish talked about earlier, we have to be out here talking about these things and making sure people know. What's going on. So I'm just hoping, I think there's just been so many things that Trump has just, we're thinking, oh, this is going to be the thing that gets him. And this is going to be the thing that gets him for years. Maybe this is it. I don't know.
I think after years of like trying to chip against this wall, like I think we are finally starting to see cracks and sort of break the Trump mystique. And his people are starting to see it. Like you said, they're seeing the cuts, they're seeing the tariffs, they're seeing things that are going to affect their bottom line. They're seeing the way he's lying about this Epstein stuff. I think a great example of really breaking the Trump mystique was done by the folks over at South Park this week, who in their season debut, excuse me, presented Trump very much in the style they depicted Saddam Hussein in their movie My God, like 25 years ago now, showing him with a flappy face, using the phrase, "Hey, relax, guy," getting in bed, literally in bed with Satan. And he keeps suing everybody and removing his pants to show off his very, very tiny manhood, which they showed 5 times throughout the show. And the best part of this is a day after South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone signed a $1.5 billion contract with Paramount. So they got the bag and then let Trump have it. Well played, gentlemen. But this is the same Paramount, mind you, that over the last several weeks has been involved in several stories with the Trump administration. If you recall, he had sued Paramount and CBS. CBS is under the Paramount umbrella for claiming some like deceptive editing of a Kamala Harris interview during the campaign last year. Yeah, bull crap. No one thought it would really stand up in court, but that's not the point, right? The point is for Trump to tie things up and extract some concessions. Paramount settled out of court for $16 million to settle this suit, also agreeing to run like $20 million worth of public service announcements for the administration. And then last week, Paramount canceled Stephen Colbert's show, his late night show, after Colbert went on a scathing rant against Trump and against his bosses at CBS and Paramount. So I think folks were really concerned about that, the stifling of dissent. But this week, Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, Comedy Central is another Paramount property under the same corporate umbrella. On Monday night, Stewart really went off about the Colbert firing, about Paramount caving to the Trump administration. So they're still letting him do it. Colbert is going to be on for another 10 months with what are they going to do? Fire him? He's still on the air and gets to say whatever he wants for 10 months. And the other day, hey, the Paramount Skydance merger that they were aiming for, that everybody said they were, settling with Trump to get approved, it went through. So my question, did Paramount play Trump? Did they get what they wanted, and now they still get to criticize him every day on their very, very large platform? Trish, what say you?
Remains to be seen. We just talked about how there is no bottom to the skullduggery with the Trump administration and with Donald Trump himself. So, maybe Commissioner Carr takes away the license for the affiliates or something like that and just continues to put pressure on them. The one thing I do want to point out is that the South Park creators are both Harvard graduates. And so too bad, for Donald Trump, he didn't squash Harvard, 30 years ago when these guys were in college. But no, I think that humor is a great way to convey a lot of political information, because a lot of people don't study it the way we do. And so I watched that South Park episode, and it was audacious. And I think we'll see more to come from Jon Stewart, and we'll see more to come from Stephen Colbert. The thing is, it was $16 million that they paid, in that one suit. I don't know what the buyout is for Jon Stewart's contract or Stephen Colbert's contract, but if this is all about money, I think those numbers are even bigger than 16 million. So I think that's in play too. So remains to be seen how this all shakes out, but I'm enjoying the parody. I really am.
Yeah, well, the really, really big number there is the $8 billion, merger between Paramount and Skydance. 16 million or whatever Stewart's or Colbert's contracts are a drop in the bucket compared to that, for sure. Jennifer, I feel like in the Trump era, the only people who are serving us well and telling the truth really have been comedians. Like, the mainstream news media is not doing a good job of it. Am I wrong?
Well, they're afraid of getting sued or getting fired or saying too much. It definitely has changed. The news has in how it's reported. So right now, at least comedians can still, I guess, say things and get away with it.
They are really some of the best people to speak truth to power. I mean, look at Ukraine and Zelensky, their president over there. This is a guy who used to be a comedian, and that style of talking to people, I think, resonates best. Humor is a good way to get your point across. You can say bold, big things without them seeming too scary. Terry, do you think either Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert have a future in politics?
That very possibly could. They do anyway. So, but you talk about this entire merger deal, Scott, and we look at the $8 billion transfer of wealth and all of that, and now all of a sudden there'll be some favors because Paramount ditched Colbert. Hey, man, we're on your side, Donald Trump. So he can use his power to manipulate that to make sure that all goes through in a nice, soft way. And it's unfortunate, as we talked about earlier. It's kind of like banana republic cronyism, right? So you scratch my back and I'll turn my head when you march through. So, but I don't know if folks saw this or not, but there was a news release that was sent out from hell by Satan, and Satan is demanding an apology from South Park for betraying him anywhere close. He wants to reach the pinnacle that Donald Trump has reached in evil, and he's still working. But at this point, not quite there yet.
I'm a big fan of South Park's Satan character. I think they do a lot of good things with him. He's a lot of fun. Last thing this week, in national news, we had some very prominent individuals pass. Last Sunday, Malcolm Jamal Warner, who played Theo on The Cosby Show in the 1980s, passed away in a drowning accident in Costa Rica. Condolences to his family. I know a lot of folks my age, grew up thinking, Theo Huxtable was like the epitome of a cool dude, and unfortunately, I think, his role on that show is maybe, just tainted by his association with Bill Cosby. Speaking of terrible people and their scandals, but Malcolm Jamal Warner, cool guy, long career, actor, artist, and it's always just sad to see. 54 years old, always just sad to see somebody die when they got a long life ahead of them. Also, Ozzy Osbourne passed away this week, the former lead singer of Black Sabbath, who also had a very long solo career. Long history of drug and alcohol abuse, sort of cleaned himself up there for a while, had a long battle with Parkinson's toward the end. Very, very major figure, spanning eras. Take us from the analog LP era to the reality TV era. And finally, this week, professional wrestler Hulk Hogan died at 71, perhaps the biggest star in the history of professional wrestling. But outside of the ring, his life was also plagued with scandal. There were, steroid allegations and perhaps even like drug distribution charges with Vince McMahon in the early 90s. There was his run as a bad guy in the late 90s and early 2000s, before his own reality TV turn and scandal that followed later after he was caught on video making like really terrible racial slurs. Also, he was involved in the bringing down of the entertainment and gossip site Gawker, which really had exposed a lot of sexual misconduct and whatnot on people before the Me Too movement. They published Epstein's Black Book, if you bring that all full circle. I want to say a couple words about Hogan's relevance just in the Trump era, but does anybody want to speak to their thoughts on any of these passings here? Terry, let me start with you here.
Scott, so I'll start with Ozzy Osbourne. Matter of fact, I went to several of his concerts when they were in Louisville. Was a huge Ozzy fan, and I didn't have you peg as an Ozzy fan, Terry.
Me neither.
I don't have the Ozzy tattooed across my nose. He did with his name, but huge fan, and it was disheartening. And we're losing guys like Ronnie James Dio, Ozzy Osbourne, a lot of those guys that brought in the heavy metal era and pushed it very hard, and it's unfortunate because I grew up with that. It's sad to see a part of that fade away. But Malcolm Jamal Warner, what can I say other than the fact that the epitome of cool, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm probably the only person here that went and saw WWF at the time. Now it's WWE in life, and watched Hogan, and it was all a big soap opera, right? And really, if you follow WWE now and what was WWF, you will see how Donald Trump regulates and rules his life. He lives the life of a so-called professional wrestler, right? So all of this pageantry, all of this hoopla, all this screaming, hollering, calling people names, all of that is just Trump directly took that from the WWE playbook and is playing it out in real life. So, hey, Hulk Hogan, rest in peace. You're right, Scott. I remember when he was with the New World Order, right? And the
NWO for life, Terry.
Yeah. These are all folks that had an impact on our lives growing up. And it's one of those deals as you get older and you see these icons pass away and you realize that, hey, no one lives forever. And time does pass by.
Yeah. I did not have Terry Goodin with a Ronnie James Dio reference on my Who's Left bingo card. So check that one off. That's awesome. Trish, were you an Ozzy fan? Were you a headbanger? You hanging out at those shows with Terry in Louisville?
I must say I share your surprise about Terry, frankly. Yeah, and here's what we'll see, the big cultural divide. I have no feelings about any of these guys, except for the horrible things that Hulk Hogan has done as a person. He beat his wife, he did all kinds of stuff, and and contributed to the persona that Donald Trump is. And so, no, that's the only thing I think about any of these guys. So, Jamal and Ozzy, rest in peace. Not so eager to say that about Hulk Hogan.
Yes, Hulk Hogan, rest in hell. I mean, look, you're going to meet Ozzy there, but I think that's what he was going for. So that's okay. Yeah. Jennifer, thoughts?
I'm kind of like Trish. Like, I don't have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so, loved Ozzy. Crazy Train, of course, is burned into all of our heads, I think. Loved Malcolm Jamal Warner on the Huxtables. I really liked his character. Hulk in the 80s, WW was the F then. I remember all of that, but I guess it's also a story of fame. Both Ozzy and the Hulk, they really messed up their lives and things that they did, to stay in fame and stay famous, and drugs and alcohol and just, all of that. I don't know as much about Malcolm Jamal Warner, but from what I've heard in the media, he seemed to have led a pretty good life and was a dedicated father. But it is what it is. It happens in threes, and we're just moving on, I guess.
If you would have told me in like 1988 that Ozzy Osbourne would be like widely hailed and celebrated after his life, and Hulk Hogan would be reviled and hated, I would have said no friggin' way.
Well, Ozzy
one thing
was very
about Hogan.
Open. Like, I didn't watch a lot of Ozzy's show, but I know towards the end, they're just I always appreciate people who can be very honest and open about what life is like. And, his family, his wife, his children, like, they've all gone through different things, and they've been, talked about those things. And that does help other people, I think, in their lives, when you can see people that are struggling with some of the same things. So I do appreciate sharing of all of their stories and things.
And Hogan really, made professional wrestling, made WWE and Vince McMahon go mainstream. He always sort of perpetuated that say your prayers, eat your vitamins, train hard kind of to ethos in public. It just turned out, the guy was a real piece of shit in private.
Nobody beats The Rock, though. I have to plug him. I love The Rock. He's the best.
He is a captivating entertainer for sure, and he doesn't exist without Hogan. And like Terry said, Trump, I don't think exists without Hogan either, because Trump's entire political persona I think he's basically playing the same character he played when he was involved in WWE in a feud with Vince McMahon, the owner, and McMahon was playing the bad guy, the evil billionaire, and Trump was aligned with Stone Cold Steve Austin to take down the guy, and acting like he's he's the billionaire who's on the little people's side, right? He's still playing that guy. So that covers our. Oh, sorry, Terry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah. What about the honky tonk man? You never even mentioned anything about the honky tonk man. He passed.
Oh man,
didn't bring that up. So it's like
the honky tonk man's rivalry with Jake the Snake Roberts was seminal in my development, I will tell you. But let's move on to our one big thing for today. And this week has the theme of our week has sort of been cuts to Medicaid, the fraying of our social safety net, SNAP cuts, potential rural hospital closures. Jennifer was my guest on the podcast this week, and we talked about some of the changes that went into effect here at the state level and how those are going to affect folks with disabilities. Yesterday, I was on a live stream for 8.5 hours as events took place all across the state. We had marches and rallies in South Bend, Fort Wayne, Terre Haute, Maryville, down here in southern Indiana. We had this motorcade for Medicaid along with the Indiana Rural Summit. I know, Trish, you were a part of that. Your group was in North Vernon. Y'all sort of headed toward Salem. There was another group coming up from the Evansville area, and then Michelle Higgs had her area people. Long day for her. They started in Martinsville and wound around the whole state, stopping at all these rural hospitals that are up for closure. I had a chance to talk to a lot of folks yesterday whose Medicaid is in danger with these cuts, whose family members who are disabled risk losing support, people who risk losing, food, having food taken out of their mouths, and just so much of it is unnecessary. It's not like we don't have the resources. We gave our money to tax cuts for the rich instead of strengthening the social safety net, right? Like, these are false choices. Lack of money is not the problem. Yet this is what we're doing here in this country. This is the Trump regime at its worst, and the Braun regime at its worst here in Indiana. All of you, I think, have kind of intimate connections to these programs as folks in largely rural southern Indiana. Jennifer, I do want to start with you because we talked about this earlier this week. The folks who are going to be hurt most by these cuts are the disabled community, right? The folks who are already the most vulnerable. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Right. Well, they definitely are for a couple of reasons, but one of the biggest reason is because they don't have power and they don't have a voice. When we are talking about Medicaid in the media right now, most of the time we are not talking about folks with disabilities. We are talking about other people that maybe work part-time or they're not making enough money from their jobs. But people with disabilities, they don't have a safety net at all. And again, a voice. So it really affects people with disabilities, but it also really affects women and mothers because they are the ones that are oftentimes the ones that are home, that are the caregivers that are going to have to give up their jobs to stay home because the state is cutting how much care folks can get as well. So there's all sorts of cuts with Medicaid, with all sorts of different types of people and all sorts of different types of programs. So it's important that we definitely keep that in mind with people with disabilities and some of the services that they use that are outside of what you think of with, most people on Medicaid, just the health insurance.
Yeah, well, the most people on Medicaid, right? And again, the vast majority of these folks are, actually disabled or sick where they can't work or they're taking care of a loved one. Republicans in Congress like to their new boogeyman is like the 29-year-old living in their parents' basement who doesn't want to work and just mooches off of Medicaid. Like, okay, number one, like this really hardly ever happens, and number two, I mean, it's not like they're stealing money. It's healthcare. 29-year-old dude probably isn't going to the doctor anyway, right?
That's probably true. That's probably true.
I
do want to mention.
Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
I was going to say, I do want to mention within the system is that we have folks with disabilities and we have families as well that a lot of times economically are also having to rely on Medicaid. But then we also have the workers. We have the direct care staff that too, a lot of times are also using Medicaid. So we have a lot of people just within this disability community, and a lot of those staff also have disabilities themselves as well. So that is just a small part though of what the type of folks that do use Medicaid.
Yeah, Trish, I've seen estimates that if all of the various cuts, all of the red tape, all of the hoops, get implemented and weed out as many people as they're aiming for, up to like 267,000 Hoosiers, including children, seniors, right, and the disabled, like we said, could lose their care.
They could lose their care in addition to the nearly 600,000 Hoosiers who rely on SNAP, the food benefit program. Mm-hmm. That constitutes over 200,000 households. So we're looking at planned destruction of every support that people need. And the thing this does not get enough notice, and that is the bulk of Medicaid fraud, when you're talking about actual dollars, is not from individuals. It's not from, Donnie in his basement, trying to get Medicaid while he's, on the internet or something. It is guys like Rick Scott, Republican senator from Florida, who was fined $2.1 billion for Medicaid fraud. That is where the real fraud and abuse is happening. And yet it is the Trump administration and Republicans who are putting the burden of cutting Medicaid spending so they can give tax breaks to their rich friends, instead of going after the institutional violators of this program. And it sickens me to think about what's going to happen to family. What's going to happen? 60%, and in Southern Indiana, over 60% of nursing home residents rely on Medicaid to pay for where they live. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do?
Where are they going to live?
Where are they going to go? Is it TFB for them? So no. And I just want to follow up with the whole idea that when the big BS bill was going through Congress with all of these cuts and all of these tax breaks, Lisa Murkowski, who does happen to be a Republican from Alaska, stood her ground, and she got Medicaid relief for her state. She got special tax treatment for some of their industry, and one other thing that I can't remember. But did our Indiana Republican congressional group band together and say, hey, let's get that for Hoosiers? No. They stood by, they rubber stamped this stuff. And so when we look at the things that are happening at the federal government level and we see our own Hoosiers not standing up for us, people need to start paying attention to that.
Yeah, and Terry, Trish mentioned SNAP, and I know that doesn't just help hungry people, it helps farmers too, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's the facts that a lot of these folks don't realize is the wholesale impact this has on not just the end product, the person who's not going to be able to eat, but all those folks then that supply that food all the way up through the line, the fertilizer, the seed cells, all that stuff. So this is all going to have a major impact on our lives, as we said earlier. And as I kind of pointed out earlier, Scott, in the show, all of these things are disappearing with increasing prices. You've got SNAP going away. You've got support for public education going away. You've got Medicaid going away, which, by the way, nobody likes freeloaders, right? Like you said, Scott, Trish, and Jennifer, dump the freeloaders. They know who they are. There's very few of them. Get rid of them. But really, the reality is these are entry level job, entry level employees of people who are working. They're the ones that are on Medicaid, right? Because they can't afford health insurance in their job. So all this stuff is going to impact our society, and it's just too bad. And it's nothing short of evil. And I'll challenge anybody. And those folks who pound the Bible on Sunday and Wednesday night, and then turn around and fly their Trump flags, I challenge them, man, because there's nothing that says this is right. We're supposed to take our brethren and not punish them and not make them suffer. So it's evil, it's anti-American, and it's absolutely ridiculous that we let this go on. And I just hope that people realize this. But at the end of the day, think about this. Everybody's heard of something that's Project 2025. All right, it's being implemented, folks, right in front of your eyes.
Yep.
Realize it. And guess who's going to get the blame? Once again, I'll go back to this. This is all going to take place in the year 2027. Who's going to get the blame for it? The Democrats who are in office that throw out the Republicans that did this. So we've got to be able to massage this, folks. We've got to make sure people know the real story. And as we go along, I know as I talk, I'm reminding people now, remember, this don't take place for 2 years. Remember who's going to be in office. Remember who did this to you. And I think we need to make sure we do that to educate people.
Right. Yeah, we really have to keep hammering it home. We talk about this event yesterday and bringing attention to these cuts. And so many of them are not going into effect yet. They are going to come in 2027, 2028. Even just here in Indiana, some of the more stringent requirements went into effect at the beginning of July, but some of those aren't even coming yet. So it's going to be like drip, drip, drip. And I think, these Republicans are hoping that people won't notice it if it sort of doesn't happen all at once. If it happens out over time, maybe you forget about it. So it's going to be incumbent upon folks like us to keep this in the news, to keep highlighting stories of people who are being left behind by this. One of the things we talked about during the live stream yesterday was how companies like Walmart actually, Terry's talking about folks who are, entry-level jobs. They're working full-time. Their company doesn't offer insurance. A place like Walmart, not only do they not offer their people insurance, and not only do they pay them substandard wages, they also help them apply for Medicaid. Mm-hmm. So they have programs that it's cheaper for them to pay their employees crap and then have a whole HR mechanism for helping these folks get on public assistance. So the government, us taxpayers, are paying for their employees' health care instead of them. What? That's ridiculous.
Thanks for pointing that. A lot of people don't realize that corporate welfare, right? And there's a whole history of that taking place here in the last 15 or 20 years when things under George W. Bush changed in our great nation. So we've got to talk about that. Those are the hidden things that people don't see, and it's a situation where it's kind of like everybody says, "Oh, let's raise the sales tax." Everybody then just pays for what they use, right? No, those folks who are at the billionaire level and the millionaire level, they don't pay sales tax. They write it all off. So it's one of those deals. People just don't understand what happens, and it's just a slight action. And thanks for pointing that out, Scott. That's very important what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Terry. It's hot take, maybe a controversial take. I don't think employers should have to cover their employees' health care insurance. It's a stupid way of doing it. We should just have a universal system where this is handled by the government. That's the largest risk pool. It's the most best way to marshal resources. You get the best bulk discount buying drugs and services this way. And frankly, I think a lot of the businesses would like to not have to deal with the headache of administering private healthcare programs.
Right.
Jennifer, you're a small business owner. Do you have to mess with all that?
I do. Because we're a family business. So most of my adult children family work. So we have health insurance for our employees, and then we have a lot of part-time workers that are contractors. So, but it's a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, it is so expensive as a business to be able to provide health insurance.
Yeah.
This is, one of the things that also came up yesterday along these lines. We're so capitalism pilled in this country that we would rather pay private health insurers $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year for healthcare that doesn't even cover everything versus paying like $4,000 a year in taxes for a more comprehensive universal healthcare system that does cover everything. And people are like, I don't want to pay taxes. Trish, how do we break through that?
I don't know. Oh, that's I think all of us, if we had that answer, we would be doing it. We can't. I just remember, I go back to this, and I know our time is running out, but I remember when my dad came back from World War II, and, he went to school and he was working. The federal tax rate was 60% on his income level. Now it's what, 32, maybe? So that's an infrastructure problem that we have allowed this idea that free enterprise and unfettered capitalism is going to take our country forward, which is exactly the wrong idea. So that's one thing. Raising Social Security contribution limits. Now it's what, 182,000 for a household or whatever. It's
Something
on
like
individuals.
that. Yeah, Elon Musk is done paying his Social Security taxes at 12:05 p.m. or a.m. on New Year's Day, right?
Right. Making that small adjustment, and I can dare say that people making six figures will not miss an additional year or two or whatever or bracket to help keep our country solid. But that's not the prevailing thing. And I'll get back to what Terry said. And it isn't Christianity, yes, good, but they're all religions. If you look at what they really mean help one another. And so we are so far away from that. I hope we can get back to it.
Yeah, 100%. Another thing that came up yesterday during the live stream conversation is we're talking about like unfettered capitalism, and I brought up this metaphor. It's like I think of capitalism like a powerful group of wild horses, right? Lots of horsepower, can do big things if that power is harnessed and directed in a direction you want to go, right? If you don't harness that power, if you just let the horses do what they're going to do, they're going to cause havoc and destruction. They're going to trample you. So yes, capitalism is a wild horse. Terry, you're a livestock guy. Is that an apt metaphor?
It is. Nothing go unfettered. I mean, you have to train animals just like the government's. It's got to be trained. It's got to be reined in. Unfortunately, we don't rein in capitalism because we think it's just the way it should be. But think about this as we talk about through the whole system here, and when we come to a close here. And I want people to think about this. I have people vote. They vote a certain way. Well, yeah, but they're a good guy, or but she's a good gal, right? That's why I voted for her. Well, let me ask this question: is someone a good person that intentionally votes to take away? Let's bring us to ground zero, okay? If someone votes to take away health care from children who are sick, if they vote to take food away from hungry children, just so people like Jeffrey Epstein can buy another sexcapade island, is that person really a good person? Let's think, man. Those are the consequences we're living in.
I haven't heard it framed that way, and that's a really good way to put it. It really, puts that dichotomy out there, because it's not just, innocent, vulnerable people against, this vague billionaire class who doesn't need the money. It's, oh, this specific really nasty billionaire. Think about that. And you know what, Terry, I'm stealing it. I'm gonna use it. Jennifer, you do work most closely, I think, with folks who are going to be affected by these cuts. What is one thing you want folks to take away from this week, from this discussion, about how folks are going to be affected, and what can us folks who maybe aren't going to be directly affected do to help others?
Well, I think some of the things that people can do, first, they need to educate themselves and help to educate other people, because Medicaid is just such a huge, vast thing. It serves so many people in this country, in the state of Indiana. But I also want to remind people that at times the state does listen, especially when it comes to people with disabilities. There has been times in the past, the state always has listening sessions for a period of 30 days when they try to make some changes. So right now the state is proposing certain changes for certain types of therapies that individuals get on the Medicaid waiver program. So I really encourage people to contact their legislators, tell them not to cap and to cut services for people with disabilities. And also, if you have a family member or a friend with a disability, just be out there, be supportive, take the time to listen to them, any concerns that they may have, and just stay tuned and speak out. We have to be aware of what's going on, and we have to share that with other folks too. But your voice matters. Your vote matters. We're not voting right now, but your voice matters just as much.
It matters, and it especially matters like when those of us who maybe get taken more seriously by certain parties, for example, like old white guys like me and Terry, for whatever reason, we have more social capital than y'all do, even though we haven't earned it. We got to use it, right? We got to spend it wisely. So we do got to get going here in just a couple minutes, but I did want to give all of you an opportunity to, say a couple final words, maybe tell the good folks where they can get a hold of you online, or maybe give them a project you're working on, a website where they can find more information. Trish, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, thank you very much. I've started going back on Facebook and posting things. And so, Trish Whitcomb at Facebook, and I'm using my Whitcomb for Indiana Facebook page as well. I just want to point out that local groups like the Kiwanis Club in Austin, Indiana, they have a summer food program. And despite the cuts, they have made up the cuts among themselves, and they are continuing their summer food program, and that's the kind of Hoosier reality that I'm afraid is not going to carry the day, but it shows that people will step up and help their neighbor. And so I encourage everybody, whether it's through your church or just go online and see what your United Way or some of your other community groups are doing to help people, because that help is going to the need is going to become greater and greater.
Thanks, Trish. Appreciate it. Terry, how about you? Where can the good people find you?
Hey, they can find me on X at Terry_Goodin, and just continue to try to spread the good word about what goes on in Indiana. Just like Trish pointed out there, we got to make sure that, hey, we can sit and complain about all the things that are going on every day, but if we don't do something about it, then we're just as guilty as those folks who do the cuts, right? So we got to figure out how we can outflank those folks and kind of put the pie back in their face and say, okay, ooey on you, right? So with that, thanks, Scott, for having me on. It's been a real honor with these two ladies. I always enjoy being with them, and I respect them tremendously. And I just say thank you, Scott, for what you do, man. This is a big part of getting that word out, and this, you that. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Jennifer, David, final words.
Final words. I don't know. Pay attention to everything that's going on, and be talking and challenge your friends and family too. That's okay. We don't have to be fighting, but we need to make sure that people are aware that they know what are in bills that are out there, changes and cuts that are out there. And that is not, you don't just make your voice known at voting season, you make it known all year long. And you can find me, Jennifer David, for Hoosiers with Disabilities. I've kind of updated my Facebook to that, trying to focus all of this year just on people with disabilities. Why I decide if I'm going to run in 2026.
And don't you have a podcast these days too?
I do have a podcast. I have a lot of things going on, but I do have a podcast called Disability Indiana, and we're focusing really on just showcasing people with disabilities. I also am the secretary of the Independent Living Council with the state of Indiana. Right now, we're really working on projects with guardianships and helping to educate people that you don't need to just get guardianship of your loved one when they are 18. There are lots of alternatives out there for people to be able to be more independent and to have more control over their own lives. I also have a nonprofit called the Kimberly Renee Foundation. I have submitted a grant in Scott County that I hope I get. If not, I'm going to be working hard to try to raise some money. But it is a family disability kind of connection thing in Scott County to try to engage people and families with disabilities, provide them education support, how to apply for services and supports throughout the state. And then I also own a disability service agency called Outward Bound Community Services. We updated from being just support services to community services in January of this year, so we can encompass and support many other types of people. So you can find me at all of those places, and then other ones, you never know where I'm going to be. I'm in Indy right now, but I'm getting ready to go back down home. I'm going to go through Scott County, which is the county next to me. We have the same Kiwanis that Trish was mentioning. They're just a fantastic group. I know Terry's familiar with them too because he's from that area, but it's groups like that that really pick up the slack. They've been doing it all along. So if you have a local group like that, there's so many social, organizations like that out there. Get involved. That's really one of the best things that people can do is to get involved. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah. So follow her Disability Indiana podcast on YouTube.
Yes.
While you're there, be sure to subscribe to Project Next. Click the bell, get the notifications. Same thing on Facebook and Twitch. ProjectNextIndiana.com. All of the social media places. We are there, as am I, at HoosLeft.us. You can find me on YouTube too. Subscribe and the bell and all that jazz there. In the meantime, you can find me on, in addition to YouTube, Facebook, Blue Sky, and TikTok at HoosLeft, and all your other social media sites at ScottROG78. Until next week, love each other, Indiana.